So I just finished playing the Multiversus closed alpha. I was originally going to wait until the game went public in July, since we'll probably get an actual taste of what the microtransaction will look like, which is what I'm more concerned about if I'm going to be honest. However, the more I played it, the more I wanted to share my thoughts. Like most people who are watching this video, I'm a huge fan of Smash Bros. And I've spent thousands of hours playing it casually with friends and competitively in tournaments. However, since 2020, I've been slowly moving away from the Smash series, and I've been playing more new platform fighters. Rivals of Aether is probably the platform fighter I've put the most hours in, but I've also spent so many hours playing games like Slap City, Nick All-Stars, Max Studios, Flash Party. Almost every platform fighter I've played has been amazing and I love dearly. For the most part. The point of me saying all this is to let you all know that I am far and away from a blinded Smash fanboy who just wants every platform fighter to fail. I, more than 90% of Twitter, actually want to see this genre thrive because these games deserve a lot more credit than they're given. But that all being said, I had the lowest expectations going into Multiversus. When they first revealed the game, I honestly thought the game was just going to blow big time. With how slow the game looked and all this talk about 2v2 and nothing else, along with the game being free to play, I pretty much had no faith in this game with my experience with free to play platform fighters. And my impressions of the game didn't get any better as time went on. When I saw Velma revealed on Twitter with text saying Jinkies and nothing else, I was literally laughing my ass off because of how terrible this reveal was. Not because Velma is a bad pick, it's just the way they executed it was just laughable. The friendly match with Void and the cat against the devs were cool and all, but it didn't change the fact that the gameplay looked all over the place and it was hard to keep track of what was going on. Even though so many people were saying how great Multiversus looked and it was going to be amazing, I just wasn't feeling it. But despite all my doubts, I still registered for the alpha to see if playing the game could actually change my mind. Who knows, maybe it felt better than it looked. While I will say it definitely does feel better than it looked, there's still a lot I want to talk about. The first thing I want to commend Multiversus for, right off the bat, is how customizable it is. Of course you can change your controls, but you can also change the color of your teams, your opponent's colors, how the UI is displayed, and even have mature language in the game. Why the hell is this a feature? There is a shocking amount of customization in the game, and that's just for the basic settings. You can unlock profile pictures, banners, ring out effects, the announcer effects, except for some voice lines which kinda sucks, and even taunts. There's even more than what I just listed, but I wanted you to get an idea of how customizable this game is. It's really amazing when you think about it. I mean, this is par for the course for other free-to-play games, but for a platform fighter, or fighting games in general, it's actually pretty shocking that there's this much customization. When you start the game, at least in the alpha, you have 9 characters unlocked, and can get 5 additional characters by purchasing them with the game's currency. This is where I start to put a huge asterisk on things I say, because the devs can pull a nitro cart and increase the grind needed to unlock characters and skins, or make unlocking characters even more expensive. But in this current build of the game, you need 20,000 coins to unlock a fighter. You earn coins by completing challenges and playing matches. The amount of coins you receive is reasonable from my experience. I was able to unlock Batman with enough coins after 20 or so matches, which isn't too bad all things considered. However, I was able to win more matches than lose since I'm a lot more accustomed to other platform fighters. So someone who might be new to this genre may have a harder time unlocking characters. You still get money and experience points no matter what the outcome of the match is, but your performance does influence the amount of money you earn from matches. Okay, editor's note, I just found out that all the progression I made in the alpha won't be transferred to the beta or public release, which is lame as hell. But the reason I'm saying this is because there's a high chance that they'll probably change the economy of the game. I just wanted to bring that up now since everything I've just said about unlocking characters and how easy it is to get coins can and most likely will be invalidated when Multiversus goes into beta or the final release. There's a good chance that won't be the case. I hope that's not the case. But I will say I am pissed I have to unlock Harley Quinn's announcer voice again. And now I think it's time we actually start talking about the gameplay of Multiversus. This was the main aspect that was either going to make or break it for me, with the glass RA showing some cracks before I even started playing. I'm not even kidding when I say I expected to just play it for an hour, get bored, and not even touch it again until a year later. But to my surprise, despite having the lowest expectations I've had for a game in years, I found Multiversus to be pretty fun. I'm not even joking. I do have to say right off the bat, if you were expecting this to just be Smash Bros with Warner Brothers characters, you're going to be disappointed. These games are only similar if you're giving an elevator pitch. But when you look at how the characters move, attack, defend, recover, they are anything but the same. A better comparison I would give would be to say if Brawlhalla played like Rivals of Aether. So pretty much if Brawlhalla was actually good. If you played a platform fighter beforehand, you pretty much know what to expect in regards to controls. So you have a jump, normal attack, and special attack, and a dodge button. You can do different attacks depending on the direction you hold the analog stick. In this case, it's neutral, up, down, and left or right. When you're in the air, you can fastball by holding the analog stick down, and can cancel the fastball by letting go of the analog stick. There's a lot to go over, so let's just start with special attacks. Special attacks are pretty by the numbers, but there are some special attacks that have a cooldown after using them. I'm kind of torn on this feature because on the one hand, this does prevent people from spamming their specials, which is something that a bunch of platform fighters struggle to deal with. For example, Harley Quinn has a down special that resets her jumps, which would make it impossible for her to get edge guarded. Having this cooldown system helps prevent people from just spamming their best attacks. On the other hand, every move that is on cooldown resets their cooldown every freaking time you use them, except for some moves like Harley's detonators. This has resulted in some matches where I or the opponent just dash away just for the cooldown to end, because without those moves, you're at a huge disadvantage. There isn't any good solution to this because camping in multiplayer games is an unsolvable problem, and I really do mean unsolvable. I have yet to find a game that truly negates camping of any kind. Something that's pretty unique about special attacks is that some moves change depending if you're playing singles or teams. Rain Dog's neutral special, for example, is a beam of light that does damage to their enemies in singles. While that's still the case in teams, you can tether your teammate to help them recover back to the stage. This is honestly such a cool concept. Special moves in other platform fighters are mainly just used for recovery or shooting projectiles, but now there's this new layer of depth that's exclusive for Multiversus. Moves that only give you a temporary buff now gives your entire team a buff. Moves that seem completely useless in singles now have a greater use in teams, which normally I'm not a big fan of, but it's such a cool idea regardless. I love this idea in theory, however I feel like this concept does get lost in translations when you're actually playing teams. We'll get back to teams later, but overall, I think special moves have been implemented in a cool, interesting way. But I think I more like the idea of how special moves are implemented than the execution. The cooldown system is probably the more glaring flaw that I've pointed out, because it doesn't really solve any problems that it's trying to fix. Despite that, I still enjoy using specials in Multiversus. Really wish I could say that about normal attacks. My main problem with the game stems from normal attacks just being clunky, to put lightly. Let's start with grounded attacks. There's no traditional strong attacks, however you can hold the attack button to charge your normal attacks. For some moves. For some reason that I cannot fathom, not all attacks can be charged. Why? I don't get why they wouldn't just make all attacks chargeable. When the tutorial first talked about them, I just assumed that it would just be a risk-reward system, where you could just either tap the button for a quick attack or hold it longer for a more powerful attack. Which is the case, but only selectively. This wouldn't really be that big of a deal if it didn't change depending on the character. But in fairness to the game, most of the casts have their chargeable moves in similar inputs, which is mainly up, down, or neutral. But it just makes the characters that don't follow these rules seem very jarring. You can argue that this is no different than how in fighting games people have radically different inputs, and it's just a matter of knowing the character. But in a platform fighter, I'd rather have my characters be unique in how their attacks interact with their opponents, rather than having different inputs entirely. This problem also applies to aerial attacks, and I argue even more so. Why am I able to charge Harley's down air but not her up air? They're very similar moves where Harley shoots her gun and gets a vertical boost, but for some reason the balance team thought it wasn't a good idea to have her up air be chargeable. Shaggy's neutral air and especially down air seem like perfect moves to be chargeable. But for some reason that's only given to his side air? Why is Shaggy's knee worth being a chargeable move, but not his other aerials? This wouldn't be so bad if there was some logic to what moves were chargeable, but it just seemed like they chose to make some moves chargeable just because. Some may say this isn't the end of the world. I mean, you could get used to which moves are chargeable after a few minutes. It can be seen more as an inconvenience for people, rather than a crucial flaw for the game. But I still think there should be more logic to what moves are chargeable. Or just make all attacks chargeable. Like, I don't see why not. But don't worry, there's a problem that's even worse with aerials. Because attacking in the air feels terrible. I mean, it is the absolute pits. For some reason, they decided to make most aerials halt your horizontal momentum completely. It doesn't matter how fast you're moving in the air, if you press the attack button, you freeze instantly in the air and move in a set speed which is painfully slow. It's something that's really hard to describe, but you can feel the moment you touch the game. I will never understand why the hell they made this decision. The amount of times I undershot my attacks because the character just stopped on a dime whenever I press the attack button is insane. I would expect this to be a thing for some special attacks, not aerials. Whenever I just want to go off stage and do a down air spike, it never fails for me to just hit the floor because God forbid I have any momentum in the air. What makes this even more baffling is that the game encourages players to be in the air. So this decision of making attacks not have any momentum in the air make no sense. The only platform fighter I know that does this on the top of my head is Brawlhalla. And if you couldn't tell already, I can't stand that game. So you can probably guess how excited I was to be reminded of that when I was playing Multiversus. Superman and Tom are perfect examples on how this mechanic just ruins how characters play. A lot of their aerials are pretty good. Hell, Tom's up air is really good. It kills extremely early, and it's pretty fast. But almost every attack they do stops them on a dime, and it ruins the character for me. Normally when a fighting game does halt their momentum, it's normally done with a special input that is used for a mix-up to punish their opponents who are accustomed to their opponents jumping in a linear arc. Multiversus on the other hand doesn't do that. Aerial attacks are done this way to just make combos more aerial focused, while sacrificing basic movement. This is something you could sorta get used to, but I don't know. I'm 12 hours in and I'm still undershooting attacks just as much as I was 20 minutes in. Dodging is the main defensive option since there's no block button. Dodging gives you a small amount of invincibility, allowing you to avoid attacks and whiff punish your opponent. The amount of invincibility you get is dependent on your dodge meter. The more meter you have, the more invincibility you have, and vice versa. I really like how this meter is implemented, since it discourages people from just dodging all the time without sacrificing mobility. I was never completely sold on how Smash Bros. Ultimate made rolls and air dodging slower the more you used them. Even though I think it was definitely better for the game in the long run, it always felt like it was a bit too much of a punishment, and I really think they should have just nerfed that cursed shield. So it's nice to see Multiverse go a different approach when it comes to punishing players for spamming the dodge button. You can dodge both in the air and in the ground in any direction you want. Now anyone who's played Smash Brothers probably has one question floating around their head now. Is wave dashing in Multiverses? Can you wave dash all around the stage 20XX style? And the answer to that is no-ish. While you can't wave dash traditionally since you gain almost no traction when you air dodge to the ground, there is some unique tech that is listed in the tutorial that does a very similar thing. When you're on the ground, if you dodge forward and press the jump button, you keep your dodge momentum and can do air attacks or special attacks with this burst of speed, assuming those attacks don't halt your momentum. So this is very similar to wave dashing, except you're reversing your inputs from jump to dodge to jump, and instead of being able to use ground attacks with horizontal momentum, you're able to do air attacks with this horizontal momentum you gain from dodging. Is it better than wave dashing? In the context of Multiverses, where being grounded doesn't really matter, I honestly think this tech is more useful than wave dashing. If the characters had more weight and they were weaker in the air, wave dashing would probably be better to have. But since Multiverses is a more aerial focused game, this tech definitely has a place in the meta, and I could totally see top players using this a lot to close in gaps and make quick escapes. Multiverses really encourages the player to be in the air. Airspeed is substantially faster than ground speed, especially when you're doing the Multiverses air dodge tech. Ladder combos are pretty prevalent, and recovering back to the stage is super free, with you being able to jump in the air twice by default, using 2 specials, and can air dodge twice before needing to land on the floor. And if you somehow run out of all those options, you're able to wall jump an infinite number of times. Never before have I seen a platform fighter with this many options to recover back to the stage. Most platform fighters have 1, maybe 2 viable options to recover. Any other option is either too risky to be used reliably, or requires a very specific scenario to be in play in order to work. But Multiverses gives you everything in the kitchen sink. With so many options, you would think edgeguarding wouldn't be that viable. Normally when a platform fighter has broken recoveries, that's usually a death sentence for any offstage interactions. But that's normally the case because they have 1 unbeatable recovery as long as they have their jump. If you don't have that jump, you're as good as dead. Don't believe me? Just look at Smash 4. Going off stage in those games puts you in such a worse disadvantage because you're sacrificing a jump. And most fighters have, at most, 2 jumps. But with Multiversus giving you almost every option you would want when you're off stage, you're able to edgeguard your opponent and still manage to come back to the stage if you somehow get punished. This results in a lot of scenarios where it's a back and forth battle to try to stay above your opponent and see who could try to spike the other person first. And this is so much fun. This is where Multiversus truly shines, in my opinion. Since everyone is trying to change up how they're getting back on the stage, so you could try to put your opponent in a worse position and keep that pressure going so they don't take that advantage back. It's so sick, and I haven't seen a platform fighter have this tug-of-war system off stage before. Granted, this can be done in other platform fighters, but Multiversus encourages it more than any other game. That's mostly all I have to say in regards to the core gameplay. Overall, it's really fun when you take away the janky aerial out of the equation and the execution of charge moves. It may not come as a surprise that I gravitated towards characters like Shaggy, Harley, and Bug since their aerials aren't too polarizing or on moves that make sense. Speaking of characters, I guess I should talk about the roster of Multiversus. When it comes to these all-star rosters, I don't like to say X character was a waste of a slot, even if I don't really find any attachment to the character. Because even if I feel nothing for the character that's selected, I know there were at least 100 other people that were dying for this character to make the cut. So I don't like to shit on a character that joins a fighting game roster, except for these 2. That being said, this roster is the definition of safe. If I were to ask someone to build a roster with Warner Brothers IPs, they'd probably guess 80 to 90% of it correct. 4 DC characters, 2 of them being from Batman, 2 Scooby-Doo characters, 2 Adventure Time ones, 2 Looney Tunes, 2 Steven Universes, Tom and Jerry, and a character from Game of Thrones. Oh, and then there's this weird OC that Stone's Shop brought to the Multiversus design team. Apart from Raindog, none of these characters seem that surprising. It's already been confirmed that the Iron Giant is going to be playable in the game, which is awesome, but I hope we get more out of left field choices. I know people are saying Emmett from the Lego movie, but what about Unikitty? Or maybe Nicole from the Amazing World of Gumball? Oh, or maybe Dan Backslide.
I'll steal it! No one will ever know!
In regards to how they play, it's what you would expect if you know the source material. The only one I thought was really interesting was Finn because he kind of played like Shovel Knight from Rivals of Aether. He's able to collect coins by hitting the opponent and spend them in a shop to get some buffs. I also found a problem when using Batman's Batarang. The whole gimmick of it is that you can angle it up and down. It's a cool idea, and I've been able to do some really sick shit with it. However, you can't really angle the Batarang down when you're in the air, due to the game inputting a fastball when you press down. I was hoping that I was able to fix this issue by pressing down on the right analog stick while charging the Batarang, but it didn't do anything. Every character in the game is voiced, which is always nice to see. I know one of the biggest things people criticized Nick All-Stars for was the lack of voice acting. And while I love to go into why this is blown out of proportion, and probably one of the most over-exaggerated complaints, I would be lying if I said it wasn't nice to hear Tara Strong killing it as Harley Quinn again. However, I think the devs went a little overboard with voice acting. I may be the minority on this, but I feel like these characters don't know when to shut up. They comment on everything. When you do an attack, when you die, when you win, lose, select a character. Even when jack shit is happening on the screen, they still have something to talk about. Some may find this very endearing, but I just find it so distracting when you're playing. It's like those Nick All-Star mods that add voice acting to every single move they do, times 11. I remember hearing a dev on Twitter talk about how they recorded thousands of lines for these characters, but honestly, I don't think they added enough dialogue for how frequent these guys talk. Sometimes they'll be repeating the same line less than 10 seconds from when they said it.
And they call me a clown! And they call me a clown!
I really wish there was an option to lower the frequency of when these characters talk, because I do love hearing these iconic voices reprising their roles in the game. But currently you can only change the volume, which shutting them up doesn't fix the issue at hand. Okay, so I don't know how to transition to talking about perks, so let's just talk about perks. These are some special buffs that you can add to the character before a match. These perks range from increasing your attack, reducing the damage or knockback, to improving your mobility. Think of the gems from Street Fighter Cross Tekken. Or don't, because that game is trash. There are also some character exclusive perks that buff their passive abilities. You can unlock perks by either leveling up your character's rank or crafting perks when you're at a high enough level. From my experience, they aren't as game-changing as they may seem, except for maybe the character-exclusive perks. But you can still hold your own without them. So don't feel like you need the perks because they aren't nearly as OP as they were in Cross Tekken. But if Multiversus finds a way to make my stance on perks outdated, then shame on you. Why would you do this to me? Alright, we're at the home stretch, ladies and gentlemen, so let's just talk about the modes. I'm immediately going to give them shit for not having a local multiplayer mode. I really hope this is something they plan on adding in the beta or the full release, because for me, it seems unacceptable for a platform fighter, or any fighting game for that matter, to not have a local versus mode. These are one-screen games. You don't need to have 5 different setups in order to have the same screen real estate as you would in single-player mode. What makes these games still play to this day is that you could go to a friend's place or bring your sibling over to your room and play a few matches together. This is what got me into playing a bunch of platform fighters in general. I got into Rivals of Aether by playing some local matches with a friend at a Smash tournament. And I can guarantee you I would have never gotten into Rivals of Aether if it wasn't for that moment. It may not seem that important since this game is clearly online focused and free to play, but playing against a friend in person goes a long way to make someone a die-hard fan of your game. At least, that's how I see it. You can do online teams with a buddy next to you, but that is nothing compared to going head-to-head with your friends. I don't know, maybe they'll add in? I haven't really seen any sources claiming that they are planning on adding it, but if they don't, I really think they should reconsider it. Moving along to the modes that they currently have, the alpha lets you play unranked singles, teams, and free-for-all. Free-for-all isn't fun. Moving on. I enjoyed my time with singles, but if I were to come back to this game, it would probably be when they have a ranked mode. Because in unranked mode, they enable stage hazards, and I don't know, man, some of these hazards just plain out suck. I'm looking at you, Scooby-Doo stage. This stage is honestly a huge mess. And it's mainly because in the game you can't tech at all. So you're mainly just bouncing around all over the place. And most of the kills that I've gotten felt like honest to god flukes. And no offense to the composers, but it doesn't help that this soundtrack sounds like the most generic diet Overwatch sounding soundtrack I've ever heard. There's the occasional Tim Burton Batman theme when you're playing in the Batcave, which is nice, but I've heard way better music in other fighting games. Also, something that's kind of funny about the soundtrack is if you enable streamer mode, it disables like half the music in the game, leaving you with complete silence. I have yet to hear someone bring that up, but it's a thing, and it's honestly kind of funny more than annoying, if I'm going to be honest. Anyway, back to singles. Like I said before, perks aren't really that bad in singles, and I think the cast is overall pretty balanced. Some characters clearly weren't made for singles, but that's few and far between. Honestly, I enjoyed singles more than teams. Speaking of teams, let's talk about them. It's no secret that Multiversus is made for teams. From the very moment you start the game, it gives you a big text saying recommended underneath teams. All the perks say that they'll buff not only you but your teammate, with you also getting additional buffs if your teammate also has the same perks as you. This game, above everything else, focuses on teams. Which is fine, but I have one problem with it, and I know it's going to annoy people. But I hate random teams in this game. I freaking loathe them. It is a chaotic mess. First of all, it's hard to keep track of where I am. The camera seems too zoomed out for me, and all the characters seem very small while the stage is pretty big, which isn't that bad when it's only 2 players on the screen, but now there's 4 of them. And it's a shame too because the game tries really hard to make this work with all the outline options, but nothing seems to work, especially when there's 2 people playing the same character. Look at this mess. You seriously can't tell me you can figure out who is who without pausing the video. I know complaints some people had with Multiversus that it felt really mashy, and while in singles I didn't feel that at all, in teams, this is where I felt like the game was truly a mash fest. Because it's so hard to keep track of where everyone is, you're just spamming buttons for no rhyme or reason. It doesn't help that Multiversus has missions that encourages people to use the same 5 moves in order to get kills. And don't tell me about the system that discourages people from spamming the same moves, because it does not help in teams. At all. Casuals may enjoy because they don't have to think that much in teams, but I overall think random teams is just dreadful. I was originally just going to leave it at that, and just give my hot take out there, but then I gave a friend a code to play Multiversus with me. And this made teams so much more fun. Even more fun than singles. I was in a Discord chat with my friend, and we would just say where we were, who we were going to target, and if we needed help or not. Those little chats not only helped me understand what was even going on, but it brought a whole new layer of strategy into the mix. Because we would tell each other what perks we were bringing in, which ones we should probably stack to get the most out of them, or who we should try comboing on. I really hope this is something that gets transferred over when Multiversus does in-person tournaments, because this just made the game so much more enjoyable. And this makes me hope that they add voice chat when you're playing with your friends, because talking to someone makes a huge difference in my opinion. And there's one more thing I should probably talk about, and that's the netcode. It's rollback, which is nice to see. However, there were some days where the netcode was just flat out terrible. On the 22nd of May, I was seeing people just run in place for a solid minute. Then the game would suddenly roll back, making me lose my life, or the entire game. I'm sorry, but there's just no way of coding it. That's just straight up bullshit. I really wish I was recording that day, because I was getting so pissed off because it was happening so frequently. But fortunately for you guys, I did record the next day, and nothing really happened except for when I was doing this Batman ditto. Also, I don't think the game can handle two Batmans in the same game, because there was one time I was playing teams against two Batmen, and the game just straight up crashed. So that was fun. And with that, I have given all my thoughts about Multiversus. Holy shit, this took a lot longer than I thought it was going to be. When I was originally making this script, I thought it would just be like 2 pages. This thing is straight up 8 pages. And god, how long is this recording? 25 minutes! Oh my god. But I really wanted to share all my thoughts with Multiversus at the moment. And at this moment, I really enjoyed Multiversus. I really hope I didn't sound too negative. I just had a lot to say, so I don't know if everything I said seemed too positive or too negative. It's hard to tell until I release the video out, you know. But I genuinely enjoyed my time in Multiversus, and I hope it keeps improving. They seem to be listening to feedback if the devs on Twitter are anything to go by. So I'm sure Multiversus will just keep getting better. I had no expectations going in, and I thought this game was just straight up overhyped and was going to suck. But to my surprise, it found a way to win me over, despite all its faults. A public beta comes out this July, and I may do a follow-up on that if there are any drastic changes from now to the beta release. But right now, I'm content with everything I said. I really hope this game does nothing but get better, because it is awesome to see a new platform fighter get such positive reception, and it would be such a shame for its potential to be wasted. So yeah, awesome job Player First and WB Games. Keep up the amazing work. And with that, this video is a wrap. Anyone who's curious about me, hate to break it to you, but you have a higher chance of seeing the moon turn green than seeing me have a consistent upload schedule. However, I am pretty active on Twitter, so you can follow me there. But my main focus nowadays is on acro projects, which is just me making devlogs about little indie games I create. I definitely don't have the same budget as Multiversus, but if you want to see some small indie guy try to make it big in the world, well, there you go. And with that, I need to edit an almost 30-minute video, so I will see you when I'm dead.